Recording is on.
Yes, eerste scan binnen.
Tjebbe,
Hoe gaat ie?
ik zweep me kapot hier.
You look very... Ja, je ziet er heel zomers uit.
Hallo.
Wat hè? Zomers, ja. Hi
Ja.
there.
Hey, Tarek, how are you doing? Oh, both Tareks.
Yeah, I have two Tareks.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Never met a Tarek, and now I meet two of you.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
And Thomas is there as well.
Hello.
Wow, there's so much color set in your screen, Thomas. With
Yep,
your flower
flowery
blouse
shirt.
and then all the laundry.
Oh yes, my colorful
Super
laundry.
nice. You do that very precisely with the, I don't know how you call them in English, the knijpers.
Yeah, that's my wife. I don't use it.
No, me neither.
I always have a agree. How do you say? We always discuss whether to use them or not. Those knipers.
Yeah, those I know those discussions. Wow, everybody joined quickly.
Nice.
Both Tareks, both of you, can you please type in your last name as well? You can do that in the top right corner where you can see your own face. If you just click your own name, then you can type your last name as well. Otherwise, it's really difficult for us to know which Tarek is which. Faida is joining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people are joining. I think we're missing one. Is that right? Class29. 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we're missing one person. No, I think he will come. He will join later. It's Feza, and she's joining right now. Hi, Feza. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, I'm fine as well. Are you surviving the heat?
Surviving the heat?
The heat, like it's so warm right now.
Warm? Yeah.
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 Can you deal with it well or not? I heard from Thomas that he is having a hard time already, but maybe it's just us, the Dutch guys, that can't deal with the heat.
I think it's because you're Dutch as well.
Sorry, what did you say? Is it Tarek?
I think it's because you're Dutch. Just because you're Dutch. Maybe that's
okay. Thanks, Ahmad. Yeah, you don't struggle with the heat.
I mean, a little bit, but I come from Egypt, so it's usually summer is like this there. 40s. It goes up to 40s.
Yeah. Also, Izmir, Turkey is like this.
Wow, that's insane. I don't know how but I'm getting so hungry because from this weather. I ate now already more than I normally do in a day, and very lazy. I just only want to sit on a chair.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Ahmed, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thanks for asking.
Cool. So you're having a nice plant and a nice bed, I see. A high sleeper, or not? In the back.
I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
So you have a nice high bed in.
Oh
in
yes,
the back
yeah. But I'm not using it to sleep. I just use it for storing stuff.
Storage. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that. Few spots where you can store things quite easily.
Yeah.
Cool. So let me first quickly introduce myself, and I will. I also have some comments before we start, and then Thomas will introduce himself and start with the real business. and then I will be quiet for the rest of the lecture, hopefully. So I'm Chebe. I'm working at Hack Your Future part-time. Next to that, I'm studying artificial intelligence at the UvA, so the University of Amsterdam. I'm born and raised in Amsterdam, never left the city, so very quite boring actually. And I'm living very close to the office, which is really nice for me. Other things to tell? Not really. Yeah, I'm 23 years old. I have a daughter that's 3 years old, and that's about it. I will be your mentor for the rest of your journey in Hack Your Future, and that means that if you have any questions, you can ask them to me, and I will help you out as much as I can. Although I work part-time, please message me whenever you like on Slack, and you will normally have a reply in most 3 days. I will also check if you submit your homework and if you submit your questions before the Q&A session on Sunday. And I can imagine that this week was quite intense, and you have Trello on one hand, on the other hand you have Slack, and we have a GitHub, and we have YouTube videos, so that's a lot, we can imagine. So I'm also here to help you out this week to get an overview on where you can find everything. So please ask it in the class channel or directly to me. Then we can help you out. And from next week on, the questions and your homework, of course, is mandatory, and the deadlines are strict. So the consequence of not submitting a question before the deadline is that that you can't join the Q&A that Sunday. And that sounds very strict, but otherwise we don't have any content, and you need to help Thomas as well to have some content ready for class. If you have difficulties with coming up with a question, also message me beforehand. So in summary, a lot of what I talked about is about communication, and we think that it's really important to do the communication beforehand and not afterwards. So if next Sunday I see that you didn't hand in your homework, that's a problem. But if you message me on Friday, hey, I have a very busy week, or on Wednesday, like this and this is going to happen the next few days, so I'm not sure if I can get the deadline, that's fine, and then we sort things out together. Does anybody have a question for me? It was a long story, a lot of information, and nobody has a question? No. Maybe I was very clear. I hope so. Then we have one person in the room that's called fellow Jitster. Hello, I don't know. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi. I'm Ida.
Hey, Ida. Can you please type in your name? Like you see your own face in the right top corner?
Yeah.
And can you please type in your name so Thomas can also ask you questions?
Okay.
Yes. Cool, everybody is joining. So Thomas, take it away. Thomas joined us now. Did you ever teach a physical lecture or only online? Oh, you are still muted, Thomas.
That will be a nice meeting. Just muted. Okay, this is better, I guess.
Much better.
I've been there at Hack Your Future just one time.
Yeah.
And I was just as an assistant for that one time, and then afterwards only teaching the Q&A sessions via Jitsi.
Yeah. So you are one of our most experienced online teachers. So
yeah, if you say so. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Can you briefly introduce yourself and what you do for a living?
Sure.
Probably developer, right?
Yeah, for a living, I try to raise my kids, take care of my wife, and next to it, sometime like 32 hours a week, I try to sell some hours myself to. I work for a boss, and I'm trying to build systems for this company. They do hosting. I don't do hosting. I don't like hosting. It's all too.
Maybe to start, what is hosting?
hosting to us is just buying computers, put them then into racks, making sure the cables are correct, and then there are like several locations, one in Amsterdam, one in Delft, one in Rotterdam, and they buy cables between those locations, make sure that if one location goes down, for example, because of a power outage or someone snaps a cable somewhere, that all the for example, we have quite some hospitals as clients. They can't afford downtime, so all the websites and software they use have to go through other lines and need to be configured that it's automatically going up again. I don't like that kind of work. I don't like to put in servers or maintain that stuff or install Windows, and I find it boring.
Mhm.
I do like to build systems, so they have a small team of 4 or 5, and we built the software that like our engineers need to use something to keep track of the servers, keep track of cables, keep track of clients. We got CRM software for clients, we got a financial software, and as a team, we try to figure out a way to make all these systems connect with each other. So when one system is being changed for another, how do we maintain our code that we're going to change a ticket system. So when someone sends an email, it's not going to the old system. At the same time, we need to develop something that the new system is going to be connected. So both need clients, both need finance information. So how do we connect all of those? And some features were lacking in the new system. So we're building an application ourselves, a web application to submit hours and write what you were doing, so we can make invoices. So I like to talk a lot with the people in there, so I know what are they doing, how are their processes working, and most often I think, oh, 1 or 2 things you're doing is easy to automate, so I'll make it easier and just give a few options in an application and make your work easier. So most of the time I make people happy, and that's what I like about my job. Uh, every day when I leave such a meeting, it's how nice! It's gonna save me some hard work. It's really uh, giving me a lot of motivation. So that's what I like. I've been doing this kind of work for 10 years or more. I had my own company for 10 years, so I think like my 11th year now. I was the business owner, and I had a few people working for me, also abroad, a few people. So I'm used to managing also a little bit. And I've also been a teacher at the university for a few years. So I like to help people be the best programmer they can be and teach. That's what I did in my own company. That's what I did at the university, and I still like to do it now. So that's why I wanted to join Hack Your Future.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, and I can speak from experience. Please ask him as much questions as you can, because I think the more questions you have, the more Thomas likes it.
Yep. Too.
So yeah, we are really here. Like, we are also depending on your input.
I think Ishmael raised his hand.
Yeah, Ishmael. Hey, Ishmael, how are you doing?
Hi, Sharon. Fine, and you?
Fine as well.
I hope you're doing well. Yeah. I have a question for Thomas.
Okay.
Can we call your function at your company as a backend developer function, or as I hear, it contains also some network part, isn't it?
I don't do the network part. There is the function does exist.
You call some kind of cables, servers, and also some physical parts of the work, or are you doing also only the programming part of the backend development?
The physical part with networking is what my colleagues do, and that's what I don't like. That was what I was trying to clarify, that I don't do networking or that kind of stuff. I like to build systems that you can see UI. And I like to do front end as well as back end, but I don't, as long as it's with code. So I like to write code, make scripts, make software. As long as software, I think that's the general thing I do. But making software is like, I've been working at this company for a year. I've done like 2 months of documentation. So just speaking with people, making sketches, asking them if it's correct, checking if the processes still work, and doing all sorts of iterations. Then making up the backend, and then asking other guys to make front end, and it's always talking with each other. Sometimes we only talk about what words we use to make sure we don't have any miscommunication. So being a developer takes talking and communication, but that's what I like. I like to understand processes and stuff. So
I understand. Thank you.
no problem. Thanks for your question. Anyone else has any questions?
No, I had one last thing that I forgot to say. I would like to know you better, of course, as a mentor. So I will post today or tomorrow. I will post in our Slack channel a link where you can schedule yourself for the first mentor talk on Thursday. What we will do, we will just have a small conversation together individually, where we can get to know each other a little better, and where you can also ask your questions if you have anything still missing in your overview of where you can find what. So I'm already looking forward to that, to see you on Thursday. That was it from my side. I will be here in the background and on Slack if you need me. But yeah, Thomas, you're way more better in this than I do. So good luck and enjoy. And thanks for helping out again.
Yes, you're welcome. I like it. It's actually a pleasure of me to do this. At the same time, I'm a bit anxious. I don't know you guys, and it's always pretending to be the guy who knows it all. I have some experience, so I know this stuff quite good. But you guys have good questions, so I had to check most of them because I've been doing this for a while. So most of this stuff I do based on a hunch, on a feeling. So I had to check what's the specs. What does the spec say? What do the guys on the internet say? And maybe I'm rusty. I'm old, so maybe I'm doing things wrong. Things change quite fast, so I have to check. I'm also up to date. I had to do some prep work. I will show you some code I've been writing to demonstrate some of the stuff. And the way I would like to take on this meeting is by going on. I open Slack for myself, and I'm watching the questions that you've answered or you've submitted. And I would like to go from first to last, just from top to bottom. And if the guy or girl who submitted the question is in our room, I would like you to explain how you came up with the question. So half of these questions, there's no one to explain, so I'll just go through them and I'll try to give an answer. So let's start with the first question. I'm not sure if you do you all see the questions in Slack, or do I have to read them out aloud? Who doesn't see it in Slack? You're all muted, so I guess you're all able to see it, and I don't have any objections. Okay, the first question then, I'll just summarize the first. Ahmad sent a question, and he says, I've got 3 of them. And then he's asking about how do we deal without a live viewer? And he says, is there a way to write code and see what you're doing? He says the same would be applicable for JavaScript applications. So I'll share my screen and I'll show you what I've been doing. Let me find that little button. It's somewhere, the button to share. Oh man. Sometimes it's hard just to share. Oh, there it is. Share your screen. I'll share the. Is my screen too big, or are you able to read text like this? Please tell me now if it's too small. I can change my resolution and load. Is it fine? Or
Yeah, it's fine.
for everybody? Don't tell me in 30 minutes that you couldn't read anything.
Maybe you could make it a little bit bigger. I don't know why, but all the letters for me are blurry. They are distorted. I don't know, is it an issue with my monitor or what?
I can try to increase the video quality. Oh, it's on the highest resolution. Okay. I'll try to make the screen a little bit bigger. I'll change the resolution.
it sort of has a rippling effect. All the letters are moving.
Oh wow. My Windows just stopped working. Let's say I'll change the resolution to this. Is it better like this?
A bit better indeed. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then I'll stick to this resolution for now. Let's see. At first, I'll show you. I'll be working with the Git. You didn't have any teach classes about Git yet. You will have some classes about Git. The main thing that Git does is it will store changes on your files. So you can use it for Word, for Excel, for images. It doesn't matter. I just told Git I'm working in some directory. This is just a directory on my desktop, and I made a folder called Q&A session content with some files, and I'll open it with. Someone is muted, so I'm hearing their noisy stuff. I made this little index HTML file, and that's what you're also seeing here. I made like a snapshot. I make this file index HTML with this content. You don't have to know about Git yet, but just to make sure it isn't magic, it's not dark sorcery. I'm just picking changes and to show the different changes I make to answer the questions. When I open this file, I can edit my HTML file, and I can also open it in Chrome at the same time. So, for example, it's still empty, and if I open it here and I'll type something in body like test, it doesn't appear on the left. I can try to make it run or some sort of trick. I have to refresh in the browser to make it appear, and again, oh, it's the save button. It's not the refresh. It's refresh. So if I have to refresh, you can do this automatically, which is really convenient using live reload. And for the moment, I would advise you to use the livereload.com version. You can just install it by hand. So there's a Mac version, a Windows version, and once you install it, it will look something like this. Just add a folder. So it says I've added the HTML Week1, the Q&A session folder. I've already done that, so you see it over here. And I'm saying basically, when something happens in this folder, update my browser. And it says to do so, copy paste this tag, copy, and put it in here. So I put it there, and I have to refresh just one last time. I'll refresh. There's nothing there, and I'll type in test, save, away. Save, and you see it's just turning up in my browser at the moment I'm typing on the right. I don't have to refresh. You'll be using live reload later in a more fancy way, but this is the easiest way. Just installing the software and putting in this little script tag. And I really like to work like this. Just make it easy to see what you're doing. I also have autosave on. But when I leave this tab like this and then switch, it appears without me having to Control S all the time. So that's a convenient way to work. Let's see. I can see I've been changing this line. I've added this line is green. Let's see if it's what I was tending to cherry pick. It's not working the way I expected this to work. Let's see. Delete stash. Cherry pick. Yes. Oh man, okay. I'll have to find some other way to work through this. Reset to this commit. Okay, so it's basically it's there, the little script thing. And I think it is explaining the question from Ahmad from how do you update and preview your code at the same time?
Yeah, it does. It works the same way for CSS, of course, right?
For what?
For CSS.
Yeah, any file. If there's any file within that folder, it will reload the whole site.
All right.
Yeah, it does. Is Ahmad in the room? No.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, you are. Okay, sorry. I completely skipped your. I just
No
assumed
worries.
you weren't there. So it does answer your question.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Then can you explain for yourself what you try to ask in the second question?
The second question, yes, sure. The second question, I was trying to get into the box model again, and I was creating two box elements, right? For example, I was creating two p tags, and I tried to experiment with the sizing and the location of them both, and I wondered if the space, the default space between two box elements, in this example, the paragraph, the default white space between them, are they by default a combination of margin and padding, or only one of these?
A good question. I will show you a little bit. There's a misclicked. I hope I'm here now. Oh man. This isn't going as I expected it to go. Just give me a second.
Take your time.
Okay, I want to go to this commit. I'll use my git checkout QA session content. I thought that's the name. QA session content. It's capitals. Okay. So I'm here now. Okay, I think it's not working as I expected it to work. I'm having some difficulties today. I'm not sure, some permission issues. So I try to add these two lines, just a paragraph with a little bit text and another paragraph with another bit of text. And I'll delete the other stuff for now. That's the convenience of Git. I can just put back my stuff. Okay, if I'm correct. You wanted to know for these two paragraphs, they have margins both, and they how does it work with padding and margins? HTML started out like decades ago just to make documents, to make literature for scientists to share large bulk of text. So this is a specific feature for that case. They are saying if you got one paragraph and if you got one behind it, you don't. A paragraph has like a bit of margin block start. I expected to say it says margin on top 1 EM and margin on the end 1 EM. So it comes basically from a browser. It says your browser has some bit of styling just out of the box for you. You display this thing as a block. It's not just this one doesn't come right beside it. So they're one after the other. That's what blocks do. And they have a bit of margin. And this margin, they're basically trying to make a pretty document by checking, oh, if these two have margin, both of them, then we'll just show the biggest one. So for example, if I change the margin bottom for the first one and make it like 30px, you'll see that the red area is the 30px, and the one below is also, it still has the 1 EM margin, but it's it shows the biggest margin over here. So margins from adjacent elements, it will always show the one that's biggest. To me, this is confusing quite often. So in my code, I tend to say something like, for a p element, don't do any margin. It's because it's confusing me. And let's do a margin bottom only for 20 px, for example. That way, I know this one has a bottom margin and that one, and there's never the question which margin am I showing? Is it the one from below or is the one from above? I just tend to stick with margin from always pointing down. It's making stuff easier to comprehend. Um, then there's still something called like the padding, and padding is easy to show when there's a background color. So I will do a background color red, for example, and I add in padding for like 10 px. You could see that there's the red area just changed. So this the content or the inner part of the paragraph which got bigger, and the margin is the area between the paragraphs. It's also shown in this little tab over here. We go from elements to computed. So this is essentially what I'm trying to. Um, this is my style that I give, but they translate to something. For example, padding 10. This is a shorthand. It's actually saying padding top, left, right, and bottom. It's all 10. So when I compute it, you'll see all these things translated and what it results into. And you've got this fancy little explainer saying that the inside of your element is 35 pixels or 36 in height. Then I've added 10 pixels all around. If I would like, I can create a border. And this border doesn't exist, so this border has a width of none. There's no, it's not there. And there's a margin outside the element, which is 20. Um, and these are the elements that are there. So um, does this make sense or answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, as I understand it, now it solely depends on the style sheet of the browser, right? Is that correct?
Starting from the browser?
It depends on the style sheet of the browser.
Um, yeah, the
I
not
mean, in the
really.
example, I mean, in the example here, for example, um, the P elements only had margin at the beginning, right? Not padding. Then you added padding. So the style sheet uh, was actually giving information that these P's, these P elements, should
Hmm.
only have margin around them, not padding.
Yeah, they came out of the box with margin indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if the style sheet says that these P elements should have only padding around them, not margins,
Hmm.
of course they only have padding around them and zero margins, right? That'll be the difference, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
The most browsers do come with kind of the same default styles, but sometimes once in a while you'll see a change, and it generally uh, you'll see, oh, this is the user agent, this is the browser. Like Chrome behaves a bit differently from Internet Explorer. If if a client ever asks you about Internet Explorer, just tell them to go away. It's the worst. Internet Explorer is famous for giving weird style sheets and also interpreting style sheets weird. But whatever. The most browsers these days come with almost exactly the same default styles. Um, and when you're talking about spacing, padding is I don't know any elements that come with padding by the default. Only margin is there for p elements.
All right.
It's a specific thing for paragraphs, which makes sense because it's a paragraph in text, which need an empty space.
Yep.
Okay.
This answers the question. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. And
Uh,
then the last one.
the third one, I was just confused between the strong tag and the B tag, which was the first time I see it. Actually, I didn't know what was the B tag for.
Yeah, my gut feeling said I never used B tag before, and I thought of it to be not a good thing to use the B tag. So I did some googling, um, use B tag or strong tag, and then a strong importance, and then So I found this strong tag, and I've been reading the whole page, and I won't bother you with the whole page. But there's a small topic somewhere in between, I think. Here it is: B versus strong. This people are often confused, and it's exactly as it is at the moment.
Okay, yeah.
It's not your. Everybody has this.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the same. They're saying strong is for content you want to make sure it's important, while B is only making sure that you draw some attention, which in my mind is the same thing. It's still not clear to me.
This tells me not to use the B tag, right?
Not yet. I did find some source. Let me see. I can.
I'm not sure if we are allowed to add into this.
What was your question?
I'm not sure if we are allowed to add also with our questions, because when starting with the project, I also was reading about strong and B tags, and B is actually just like in visual aid for the website, and strong it's more meant for a screen reader. So when person who is with eye impairment, their screen reader will actually pay more attention to the items that were used with strong tag, and it will ignore the B.
Yeah, it is. This the best explanation, and the W3org website, which is like they own the specifications. They're saying quick answer. Uh, A and the B and I elements, they are bold and italic, but you should not use them if there's a better tag. And most of the time, when you want something bold, it is important. It is. You should make it strong. If it's only for styling purposes,
Mhm.
they say if you do use B or I, it's usually better to add a class attribute and then just
Yeah.
style it. If it's style it. If it ain't, that's just why you never use the B or I, because you can better just say font weight is bold.
Yeah.
Um, and put your style in your style sheet instead of HTML.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Then our next question is from Tarek, the Almanabradi, if I pronounce it correctly. And Tarek, you are here because
Yeah.
both of them are. So,
Yeah. So this question is a little bit similar to Ahmed's second question, but
Mhm.
when I was watching the video, it shows us that the margin, when you set a margin to both boxes, it collapses together. But my question is like, for example, if I want to add double the margin, like I want the margin of each boxes to appear on the screen. Is there any way that I can do this, or I should just put the margin, a bigger margin to one of them, and then it will be like double or something?
That's a good question. I actually don't know how to do it because I I can't remember of an occasion that I had to do it. For example, let me show you a little bit of how. Okay, I'll go back to VS Code. Usually, when you write a site, you go like div row, and you make another row. For example, div row again, and usually you make divs to put in your content, and say it's like this, and you say, okay, this one is background red, and that one is this is another example of annoying margins. Um, I'll remove the margins from that for now. Let's say style the margin 0 and div row. Um, green. Most of the time, you've got rows that are stacking to each other. You don't want white space between them. And usually, you use prettier colors than red and green. So that's not the best example of prettiness. But I think my point is, when I use margins over here, margin top like 10px, you get this white space,
Mhm.
which is actually white as color. And I've never seen a website that's like all the way like nice coloring and then a white line in between.
Mm.
Um, so usually you go like this and say, I need some padding because I do want the text to have a little bit of space. And you do something like this. You'll use the div row and say all of these rows have a padding of 30px, and this is looking nice.
Mm.
Instead of having white space, you'll have yeah, we wanted to call it a margin. You have a padding. There's padding between these, but there's not the ugly white line. So
Mm.
um, you do have a good question, but I've never had to fix this. So and as I said earlier, I sometimes use margin. I only use margin bottom, so it would look like this, and then I'll just calculate what could it be like, and um, like 99% of the time, this is enough, and I don't know any situation that you need to be able to uh, add these two values together.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's not really an answer, but I hope it does tell
It
you.
does. Yeah, it explains that, like, for example, in the situations that we should use padding for a better style.
Yeah, most of the time I've been using padding. It's the way we design websites these days is with more like pretty big rows with background images, and you don't want to have. I'm not sure. I could go. I'm not even sure what website I wanted to show. Any website. Yeah, this is a white in the background. Okay, this is not a good example. This one, it wouldn't matter if it's just a margin. But okay, I'm not sure. Like the Verge, I thought it has a background. If I would do a margin over here, it would give me an ugly white line because the site itself is white.
Mm.
So you don't want to use margins unless you know where to put them. Padding is usually easier, but yeah, I'll just try and fiddle and see which one comes out prettier.
Okay. Thank you.
You've got the second question.
Yeah. I actually I know I could have Googled it, but I put it also for if there's another student that has the same question. So they show us that if you if you want to remove a folder or move a folder, how to use it, like MV or RM. But uh, in case you want to like collect all the files inside one folder and move them to another one, or you want to like move more than one item to other folder. I don't know if there's a way to do this, or should we do it singularly?
Yeah, there's a way. Um, for example, that depends a little bit about the shell you're using. I'm not sure. Are you on a Mac or Windows or
Math.
Mac? I think Mac is using Bash. That's depends on the thing you use. For example, if I would use CMD, or if I use PowerShell, or if I'm using Ubuntu, the command differs because
Mm,
those three all have a different shell. The shell is just a little program that can interpret when you're typing MV, it has to run something.
mm,
So when you do it in on your computer, I think you're using Bash, if I'm correct. Um, so let's say I make a directory called temp dir. I go inside temp dir and I touch a few files. So example one, and I'll show you. There's a file called example one. And I touch text. And I touch Thomas.jpg. You'll find there are a few files in there.
mhm,
They're all empty with 0 bytes, but they're there. I'll go one back up and I'll show you once more. So I've got index, HTML styles, and temp there. If, for example, I need to move them to final there, I could say, okay, I've got both directories over here. I can move in temp there all files just by using the star and put in final there, like that. That's an option. So if I check final there, my files went there. I could also do this, move final there, and call it lost rip there, whatever. And if I check now, final there like renamed to rip there. They're resting in peace now there, and I'll stay there for now. And so these two things are there. There's one thing to notice when you're using MV with the star. So, for example, when I want to do rip there, I want to pick up everything and put them in a new directory. Make it first and temp2, and there temp there to keep my sanity. This is still there. And say in my rip there, I'll create a file called touch.env. It's not that you can see it like this. It's there, but the .env. This is the way in Ubuntu, in Linux, and in Mac. I remember I'm not a Mac user, so I have to do it by out of my head to make hidden files. If I were going to change, like move from rip there everything to temp, give me a guess. What did you think would happen with the env file?
It will probably appear the same as it is, where it already is.
Let's check rip there. So say list it all and list it and show all files, and it's still in the old directory.
Oh,
And move doesn't pick up the hidden files.
hidden files. Okay, okay.
So that's a thing you'll encounter quite often. Because as a developer, we always use the .env file. Later on, when you use JavaScript, or you're gonna need some settings that are different from your computer than from another one, you use the env file to write down those settings. And I've had this so often that I'm moving files around, and what's this directory about? Oh, there's one file, and I forgot to move it. This will happen quite often to you. So I'll remove both -r. -r is because the -r says I want to move the whole directory. So I do it like this. So, oh, it's a directory. You can't delete it. You thought, oh, remove the directory. That will work, right? Makes sense. Yeah, but you can't because it's not empty. Ah, dang it. Okay, remove it and do it recursively. Check the contents as well. So remove the whole thing with its contents. Now it's gone, finally.
Okay.
And
okay, thanks for your explanation.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Then we go on to Vida, and I thought you were there, right, Vida?
Yes, I'm here.
Cool. Can you tell us about your question?
Yes, I can. Since there is another question below that kind of complements my question. It's about relative and responsive units in CSS. And generally, it's a bad practice of using pixels since they always stay the same no matter the size of the screen, which can be really annoying on, for example, really small phones. And they advise us to use RMs, EMs, and percentages, and another units are view widths, obviously for defining width, and view heights for defining heights. But I arose with issue that during technical assignment that, for example, using view widths and media queries for the phones, they squeeze the content because, of course, the width of the phone is smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It takes less screen of the space, and you get, for example, long, really slim or thin, I don't know how to describe, letters, and it becomes unreadable.
Mm-hmm.
And if we use, for example, a really huge screen, and if we use view width, it's gonna distort the letters and make them insanely fat. So
Mm-hmm.
my question is when it's appropriate to use those two units, because they exist for a reason, and from what I've seen from some other people codes, they are generally used, but so far I didn't found the use for them. And the other part of the question then comes again to already touched media QRS. Should we then ideally change them into more responsive units that look, let's say, pretty on the phone? I'm not sure if it's understandable question, since it's not an easy topic for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do get it. So you're basically saying you try to make them responsive, but on the phone they became really small, and on the big computer they became way too big, and they're not working the way you want them to, right?
Yes, indeed. Eventually, I went into using REMs.
Okay. Um, yeah. Okay. I'll try to show what these view height and view width are for, and I basically did some googling, and I found a really funny. So I'll just show you how I came up with the thing. This is not my link. Let's see. When I was looking for CSS VW example, it says front with viewport units, and this does explain. It does show a few of these. It says okay, there are viewport units like VW, VH, V minus, and V max. How can you? What do you use them for? And you can use them for responsive typography. Um, but as you see, the size of these letters is way too small beyond usability. So you'll have to put in some cap, like it should be minimal readable. So I'm not sure if it's there. Mine minimal text size. So you'll have to use media queries, and I don't think you've touched media queries just yet. Um, there's a way to say if my screen is this big, use like a phone size, use this style. If it's bigger, use other styles. That's a way to split your styles in two or in five parts. And I tend to split it in three or four parts. And usually it's okay. I'll start with the mobile version, and if it's bigger than mobile, increase it a little bit, and then if it's bigger, add some more styles, and all the way up to lots of styles for the biggest desktop. And it's also performance-wise a good thing to give a little bit of style to your phone and more styles to bigger computers. So that's a thing I will show later. I think next week or so. But for now, this is an example which I don't agree with. It's not usual. You've seen this yourself, but there are full height layouts, hero images, sticky footers. These are the things I use them for. They're using CSS over here. It says the body as the height of the full height of the page, and they're making a grid, and they're saying the first. Oh, this is fancy HTML. And they're basically saying there's a grid template with header enough. This is navigation. This is the main. There's footer, and this is combined. Then I'll give you an example myself because this is a bit too far to explain the grid styling. Okay, let me show you. I'll demonstrate. I was doing body styles. So the first thing I did was add a link to another file, the styles.css file. And when it sees this link is a style sheet, it will load them as if it's the styles tag. And the styles in there is called body with a background color and prettier font. So that's the first thing I did. And then I create a header with text in there. And it's just a div called header with an H1 in there called awesome website. I think this is easy to follow, right? And then I try to make the header red, and I made the height of the header 1 100 VH. So I can assume that the header is exactly the size of my screen, and I want to have the text near the bottom. So I could say the margin is like 80%. 80% of what? 80% of the height, the width, the screen, the whole page. It's not making sense to me, at least, and it sometimes doesn't also work out. So I'm just making it exact. Say 80% of the vertical height. So these are like percentages of the vertical height. So as you can imagine, it will come up around 80% of my screen. There we will see the H1. So let's put this code back in place. Discard in my changes. I was doing all this stuff just now. Come on, discard it. Go back to VS Code. This isn't necessary yet. So there's the div called header with the h1. And there's the styles file, which I just included with way too much fancy stuff. I'll remove the fancy stuff for now. This is what I just told you. And let's see. This is exactly the size of my screen. As you can see, the red part exactly 100% of the vertical height. But there's an annoying space over here. Let's inspect and see what's there. I'll use this little button to select what's going on over there. You can see when I'm hovering this text, the top turns orange, which indicates that it is a margin. So I'm seeing a margin on top. So this H1 has its big margin. And this is the second example of margins going wild. We had the margin collapsing when there are two adjacent elements, they all combine and pick the biggest margin. And when there's a div with nothing telling it if it needs space, it will just put this margin outside of this element, which is annoying because I wanted this title to stay within the header and it doesn't should appear outside of the header. There's a little trick which I was just googling. So I didn't know it out of my mind as well. So I just said, okay, how do you prevent this collapsing margin with parent child? I just put in some words. This isn't even good English. I'm not sure if there's a typo in there, but it worked. So I found out how to disable margin collapsing. And this guy said, well, basically, you can using a padding or border will prevent collapsing only in the latter case. But I don't want padding. It's not what I intended to do. I don't need padding within this header, and I don't want to do a border, which is ugly. And also any value of overflow. Default is visible, but if I do overflow auto, which doesn't change a thing, it doesn't visually appear, it will fix it. So I'll go to overflow, refresh, and now the margin is nicely within my screen. And the cool thing is I've got a header that is exactly the size of my screen when it opens. When my screen changes, this header is always the size of my screen, which is cool to me. It ain't a pretty header; it's just red. So I thought if I make it prettier, I'll just put in a background that isn't red. I put in a background with an image called Lorem Pixel. I like Lorem Pixel or placeholder image, anything that's not red. So this site will give you anything. Just give me a cat that's this image this size, and if I refresh, it will turn into another cat. It's an easy, convenient way to work with whatever content you expect. So this is an example of an image. When I build websites, I always get pretty designs, but the designer most often forgets to give me the pretty images. So I have to work with demo images. And for demoing, I just Google like lorem pixel or placeholder images. The placeholder images. That's the better. You get placeholder.com, pics and photos, loremipson.io. There's tons of sites that do this stuff. Lorem pixels there, and this is just the one I knew out of my mind. So, and there you have a pretty full page header. I'm not sure if it's user friendly because it looks like there's nothing on this website and you have to scroll down to see the content. But you could say let's make it 95% of the height. And then you see, oh, there's a little bit of content, but it looks awesome at first glance. That's what I use it as a way to calculate essentially. If someone said, if a client, the designer says, well, it needs to be half of the screen or 60%, and if the screen changes, it still needs to be 60%. Okay, then I need to calculate with VH because it's the vertical height. That's like a convenient thing to work with in that case. I think this is the best example I could come up with. And let's see, I've been working with Nuran, and she had another example, I think. Yeah, for videos, background videos, do the same. You just make an element that's the right size, and you make your video exactly the same size. You can't have a video in here. If you put a video there, it won't play, it won't show. So you will have to make like an element that's actually called video, put in a URL, and then the video will just show like a 100 by 100 box. So you need to calculate the height. So you would say something like this, like the header video, and then what? I think copy paste just this little line, and then it will be the right height. It's a way to make a video appear as if it is the background. I hope that made sense a little bit. Does that answer your question for what to use VW or VH for?
Yes, I think it does. It's a bit tricky topic. I think once we start playing with view heights and view widths, it's gonna become a little bit clearer.
And most of the time you don't use them, except when someone says, I just need something to be the size of the screen.
That's amazing to hear.
So that's not often that you need them. Just headers, big images, or big stuff. That's the only case I could think of. So that's like only for layout stuff. Yeah.
So basically, if I want to play like place, for example, in the background 3 different images, and I want to take 33% of the screen, I would use 33 view heights and another 33 view heights and so on, and I have 3 laid out images in the background.
Yeah, that's an option. There's also other options for it, but yeah, that's an option. It will work. Yeah, indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Oh, there was one example that I liked also. Oh well, maybe it's a bit too much in depth, but let's say I'll remove my header, and I want to have a footer down here. Now there, when my site is really long, for example, like nu.nl, that is a big website. It's all the way down here, their footer, which is fine. But when you're building a new website, sometimes your pages are small because your client forgot to write text. This isn't looking pretty. You don't want to have a footer right there. And if the footer is also with a, for example, border top one, or like make it really ugly, right? Solid. But you know, this is where your footer starts in the background. Color is light. Don't like to use ugly stuff like this, but at least you know what I'm doing. LinkedIn PX. It's a little bit ugly, but you know what I'm doing. How could we get this stuff always appear at least here? That would be prettier, right? We could say we make this part at least the size of the page up until this point. So how can we do that? Anyone with a guess? If I say like this, ID is page. Anyone have a clue how we could use VH or VW to make this big enough that this appears to be at the bottom? I can tell you it's something over here. Do you have a clue, Vida? What can we enter over here that the page is big enough?
So maybe we could do the page in height of like 90 or 85 view heights, and it would extend this container and push the footer below.
Yeah, correct. This is exactly what it's. It's almost fancy. There's to finalize the fanciness. I would check this footer is 48 pics. Do you see the little model? It says 781 with times 48, so it's 48 pixels.
Yeah.
There's a fancy way of calculating. I could say it's 100 minus 48 px, and that way it would always. And it also has the minus 10 of the border, I think. It's okay. I forgot to calculate something, I guess.
Probably margins or padding or something like that.
Yeah, but I thought I was doing it right. But apparently I'm not doing it all right. Okay. This about the way to go. I'm forgetting something earlier. But this is fancy, and to be sure, I make it a minimal height. So this piece is minimal. Let's save that one. At least one page of height, but if the content is growing, it will just go bigger. It can be bigger. The height is not restricted. It's not fixed. It's just at least the size of the screen. So I think this is a pretty solution for a footer. It's quite easy, right?
I have a follow-up question. Should I wait till Vida finishes, or can I ask now?
I think prefer now makes more sense now, right?
I think you can ask now because I don't know. After the last example, it's pretty clear with my question about the view heights.
All right. I'm just wondering. For example, here in your example in the header, the height is 95 view heights, right? So this means 95%.
Yeah, it is exactly. It's 95% of the view height. It's like it should look like this 95% times
view height of the screen.
Yeah, well, the height of from here to like it doesn't calculate this part from the start of the web page to the bottom of the web page.
Okay. And if I'm a little bit lost still on responsive design, should I need to worry now, or should I wait a little bit till we touch it later in the when we study it?
Let me check. Hack your future. Not sure. HTML CSS. We're going to work on command line and basic HTML, introducing to Git. Response design is the stuff for next week.
Okay, all right.
So don't worry.
All right.
You'll have your explanations coming later.
All right, thank you.
So Vida, you had some more questions about how to remove directories. We did touch this a little bit already. Do you can you explain your question?
Yes, of course. We already saw you use examples in the previous, so I think we can skip what is remove directory. My question just would start from remove minus R and main about remove minus R and F, which stands where F stands for force. And a lot of tutorials say that, hey, there is an option of force remove something, but you should not use it. And automatically it raises kind of question, why shouldn't we use it? Because as I try to explain in the question, that if I understand correctly, it should remove files kind of permanently. So it means that, and I think it can happen with a lot, that we put new files in a folder and we forget it and we delete a folder. And after 2 days, we realize, oh, I would like to recover information that wasn't there. And so my question is, if we use the force attribute command, not even sure how to call it, would we still be able to recover those files? And if that actually happens, how should we do it? My guess is that the Git, that's what comes into help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not sure how clear the question again is, because it's a complicated topic and it's hard to ask questions about that you barely understand.
I think I understood bits of it. At first, when you use RM, it's always permanently deleted. So don't use RM on the stuff that you are dear to. I would always revert back to the default browser from Windows. Always use this file browser, the Explorer, or the one in Mac. Because if I delete it over here, it doesn't use RM. It does something prettier and put it in my trash bin. But using RM never uses trash bin. Doesn't The F is just there to silence it and doesn't. My dash F just says don't complain, delete it all, even if it's protected, if it's read only, or if it's someone else's file from another user. Ignore this and just delete it, which is kind of tricky because I once had a situation like this. We had a folder called, I think, for example, USR. I don't know how we came up with the. I'm not sure if this is a good example, but it said, okay, let's remove rmnf/USR. This seems to work, right? But please notice this slash. It's saying not this folder that you just saw down here. It's like the one in the root. There's a folder here called boot, etc., and a /usr folder. So when he was using rm min rm dash rf, he accidentally removed like this the program files from Ubuntu. So he destroyed the server within 1 minute. There were like 50 clients going down, all sites stopped working. We had to recover the whole server in 2 days. So I had 2 days of extra work just because someone typed in rm min rf slash something. So that was a good moment, um, that we thought, okay, we should restrict who can do this, or better not use this too much. So I would advise you don't use RM, definitely without the F, because the F says don't complain. It should have complained. It should have told my colleague, "Are you sure you want to delete all these files, which is program files, which is all read only and not for you to touch?" Um, that's what the F is for. And like I said, the R is just for saying I want to delete directories as well and like with its contents. And you can use this safely if you. I'm always doing it like dot first because it says current directory dash for something, and now it will tell you um, what's in here. So it says in index styles or USR the folder. It's a good practice always type the dot first because that will make sure you know you're doing something here. Um, so I think that answers a bit of the questions you had. You had asked them a little bit different than what I was going about, but then recovery isn't possible unless you've been using Git. uh, but if I delete the Git stuff itself, this I can see my changes, all these little snapshots of my commits. That's because Git made a Git directory with all the stuff that Git needs to know. You can imagine that if I delete this folder, bye history. So unless you made sure you uploaded it, and that's also part of Git, you can make snapshots and you can say, okay, I'll send my commits to another location and make sure they have a copy. That's integrated within Git, so that's really fancy. So you could see my all my little changes. There's an undo and there's pull and push. If it's pull and push, you can see it also over here. This little cute icon from GitHub. So it says your code's on your computer, and you've made sure it's on GitHub, so it's pushed. You'll do this stuff later next week, but then for now, I would stick with not using RM.
Okay, thank you. That's very in-depth, very clear answer.
Save yourself the trauma. Okay, I think that we've covered your questions then, right?
There will be one at the back, but I think it's best to leave it at the back because it's a little bit related to someone's else's question.
Okay. Cool. Mohammed Saif, are you around in our room or are you? I don't have the list open all the time. There's no Mohammed with us, so okay, I'll just read it aloud. If you have created via CLI and wanted to edit or insert some values, we use code dot. Command to open VCS editor, Visual Studio Code, and then we can edit the file. Is there a difference between opening the file with code dot or vi file name or cat and then the little bracket file name command? Well, essentially, when you type in code dot, it's like clicking on an icon and starting code. And I did tell you about the dot sign just now about RM. Vida, what's the dot sign about?
For staying in the same directory.
Exactly. So what happens when I do code dot? What do you expect it to do?
That it's looking for something in that directory, but because it's not specified which file, because code Visual Studio Code is installed in different directory, it won't open it in this one because it's looking for Visual Code in current directory, from what I understand.
Makes sense. Makes sense what you're saying. So, but I think it does something else. I think code is like the things that you type first. These are commands that are available everywhere. So when I type in vi like this or cat, these are like shortcuts that are available all the time. I'm essentially saying, okay, Visual Studio Code, I want to do something. I want to do it here. I expect Visual Studio Code to should just open up and have this set to the directory that I was in. That's what I expected to do. I've never used this, but so essentially just saying open Visual Studio Code with files in this directory, or you can edit it with a really basic editor. VI is like a visual interface, but one they found visual in the 1990s. That's not that visual for these days. For example, if I do like, oh, it's really small. I can do VI index. I'm not sure if you like it like this. You have to know by out of your in your mind that you put in the insert button. Now it's inserting. I have to type escape to stop writing. I have to type in double to you see it in the top left, bottom, the bottom left. I'm typing the double pointing and then write and quit the software. This isn't convenient. Never use VI unless you have to work on a server. So yeah, of course you can try to build websites in Notepad or in VI. I don't see why. And using cat, cat says open a file. This little arrows file thing says, for example, I could do test and I put it in index. Let's see what's now in index. It put in nothing. I made a mistake then, I guess. Thought I would put in this little content, but then yeah, I'm not sure what it does either. Okay, it just essentially destroyed my file. So this is, I thought it would add the content of the string to the file, but I'm probably mistaken, or I'm not learning on the bash version that I was used to.
I think you should add echo before it, or that's how I.
That could be the case.
That's how I read it, and
Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
welcome.
Nice. And you can also do like cut styles. So if I do that, it will give me all the contents, and I can. Oh, I don't need the content here. Just put it in index. Ooh, how nice! I've opened the contents of one file and I just save it in the other one, which isn't useful at all. But you might do some more stuff with it. But so these are just ways to work with files. Let me go back and see my styles. Did I want to do this? I'll leave it for a moment and I'll discard these changes. It's really convenient to use Git if it only is for yourself. So I messed up. I just discard my messed upness. And it will, it's really slow. It's slow because of the way I configure my computer. It gets usually really snappy. This was my problem. I won't tell you all the specifics, but it's my fault. um, let's continue to the next question. I think everybody got this for now. And there's Jos, but I didn't see Jos around, right? So I'll read it aloud. What are the most common scenarios in which we use inline styling? I personally don't find it attractive to do this as opposed to styling things inside the style tag. So when or why is this advisable? I very much prefer to create IDs or classes and then edit them directly in the style tag, since to me it would be a waste of time to do inline styling, given that in the end I will be going to the style tag anyways. It makes totally sense what he or she is saying. Um, you want to work with the style tag indeed, like or later on you'll only gonna be using with style with a separate style file. I agree. I will never work with inline styles. There is it's like a thing, a remnant from the past. I think to use styles on elements. There are some use cases though which are a bit in depth. For example, let's say I've got a div with ID is CMS content, and here it will be what will be just something. Um, this will be replaced by some sort of software. I'll don't go into specifics. Let's say we got a CMS like WordPress, um, or Drupal, whatever, and in Drupal, whatever you got like a widget editor, for example, a tiny MCE. And I thought of demonstrating it. There's, perhaps you know what these things look like. Demos, a thing like this. So a user has you build a nice website. It has this little editor in there. The prettiness of this editor is that it's just free to download. You can add the files in this folder, and it's almost works magically. And this thing is where your user is typing in their content, like, "Ooh, I want to make it some other text, blah blah blah," and they're saying, "Oh, I want this bold." Um, there's also a setting to change this, and oh, I want to change his color, I want to change his height, and all that stuff. Uh, this is like stuff that your user makes up, and in the end, this will be saved with inline styles. I'm glad that this rubbish that my client just came up with isn't ending up in my style sheet. This is a use case where it's convenient to have inline styles. This little bold green yellow line is just something my client can come up with, and it will save it as inline styles in the database. So it touches quite some subjects, but when my clients make up text like this, then inline styles is okay, but that's the only one of the only situations I can come up with that this is convenient to have. Um, for us as developers, we're always uh, go back to pretty styles, just like yours said. I'm seeing some of you guys watching with really much attention. Did this make sense, or was this, uh, yeah?
It
So,
does. It makes
yeah?
sense.
Okay, then I'll continue. uh, with the question from Fede. Didn't put any question. Fede is the director. Um, Amat, you got another question. Oh no, this isn't correct.
Yeah,
This is the question
question.
for now.
Just replying to Vede.
Yeah, okay. Ishmael, you're there. Nice to meet you. Can you explain your question?
It's also nice to meet you, Thomas. My first question is about the important keyword. I'm a bit actually surprised about that because it is strong enough to beat everyone, but not enough for a little child. As a kind of a parent styling, a child styling has the higher priority than a
Hmm.
parent. So I'm wondering why is that?
Okay.
Even if I put an important keyword next to a parent,
Hmm.
it doesn't win against the child styling. Why is that?
Okay. Let's see. I'll go back over here. Um, there's two subjects touching here. There's the what does important do, and how does it work when you inherit from parent to child. Um, I'll first touch on parent-child stuff. For example, we've got our pretty cat header, um, and this cat header exists. I didn't show you this one yet. This is a header, and there's a child. So this is the parent. This is the child. This is also a parent. So I've made this div ID header.
Can I please also say something? Could you please the screen zoom in the screen a little bit?
Yeah,
Can
probably
you make it
can
a bit bigger
bigger.
to see
I
that?
told you in the beginning.
I think Control plus plus
Oh yeah.
works on VS Studio Code to enlarge.
Okay, like this better.
Yes, it's
We're,
much better. Hmm?
we're
Yeah.
almost an hour in this talk, and you're only complaining. That you can. We're in the Netherlands. It's allowed to complain all you like.
No, no, no. Before I didn't have problem, but this time it's my question.
Okay,
It makes more sense to
straight.
it better, yeah.
Okay, okay. Then we're with the header element, and there's the h1 in there. Let's remove this dimmer for now. Um, I've made a header element with the background, background size and height and overflow, all these characteristics. Do you expect all of these to also appear on the H1? Does it make sense to you that we have a background image for this kitty also appear within here, and that this height also applies to this H1? Doesn't make sense, right? Or does it?
Um, I don't know actually exactly, but maybe
I could show you what
I
happens.
talked about another list, maybe another list and the child lists, and I experienced it that it doesn't work, the important keyword. I
Yeah,
don't know whether if the header, under header it works or not, yeah.
I'll show you what this. If this were if this style was actually inherited down here, it would like be like this. You'll see there's another kitty appearing in the H1. So um, let's remove this as quickly as we can. This H1 didn't inherit stuff. Let's make it bigger. Can you read this over here? I'll make it bigger as well. Um, oh, it's on the left now. So this is the H1 with this piece of content. And there's the user agent style sheet with just the browser came default with some H1 styling. And there's the body, and it's inheriting this font family sans serif. It doesn't inherit any of these. So it depends on the type of styling you're doing, if it's inherited or not. Uh, Basically, it doesn't inherit anything that's layout specific, because you don't want to have the layout from the header applied to the title. The height doesn't care. It doesn't make sense to inherit anything apart from font color or font size or those things you want to inherit. Just it makes sense to tell this file has a font size of 15 and it should appear across all the file. But it
No,
didn't make.
isn't that not inheriting? Is that because of the other CSS rule about that hash header h1? So if that doesn't exist, then that inherits the property values of the header, doesn't it?
I didn't get your question. Can you elaborate?
So you say, as I understand, the h1 heading does not inherit the properties of the header div. So I say it does. Isn't that because of we specified under certain rules for header h1? If this didn't exist, then
Like this.
it should have inherited the properties of the header, doesn't it?
So you mean like this, and change the order in my CSS file?
Yeah, maybe.
No, this won't change a thing. Actually, I'll come back to it.
Or if there have been no header h1 CSS rules.
Well, it's basically just coming down to this, that the only thing you inherit, which you can see, is font stuff. So the font styling is, in what I remember, the only thing that will be inherited. So if I put in body with font family over here, and for example, I do the header with a color, red color is about the font, you'll see that it's trying to do, my header has h1 styling in color white. Then there's the browser with its styling, and it says, "Oh, your header, it has a color which is red." We try to inherit it, but you were more specific, so we're going with white. But if I wasn't to write white over here, it will become red because this is something that can be inherited. Most things can't be inherited. That's why you don't see it happen that much. It's specifically for typography that things are inherited. That's the thing with inheritance. You don't see it happen much. So I could to put in white here, and so it says all text in my header is white, and I'm not changing it for the h1. I'm fine with it. The color is inherited to the h1. Does that make sense now? A bit more? You're still muted.
A bit more, but say that we are talking about a paragraph inside a span inline element, and give a style to that inline span, and also give a style to that paragraph element, and then the styling of span beats anyway. But when we put an important keyword next to the property value of that p selector, this makes me a bit surprised. Yeah, well, why does that important keyword go for that? It goes for everything and it beats everyone. But why is that point is an exception for this? That inline element, or that the child of the parent, that's type. It doesn't identify the important keywords. This is, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, I'll make up another example as we go. Let's say we've got this UL with LE. This one should be green in a moment, and this one is going to be red. And let's make them down here ULI green, and we will say LI space LI green or green red color red. The thing is, I'm targeting the same element twice. These are all the same elements. I'll make it clear over here that we're targeting green plus red. You'll see them appear over here. For example, I want to make it bold and this one, whatever, danger. Sometimes you combine a few classes, say, okay, this one is dangerous and this one is bold and it's also important. This is becoming a little bit of a mess. You won't know what each one does. So let's say UL li important. Important stuff is always blue. What color will it become? It became blue. That's a thing now. Okay, it can be green because we said each li should be green. But if it's red, it will be red. But this one is also important. It's going to becoming blue. What should we do to make it red? Because if we were specific, it had to be red. Yeah, okay, it's all important as well, but then we want it to be red. There are a few ways to go about this, and at this point, you'll see this one is ignored as first. It's because it's less specific. We're only saying an element is called an li, and this one is obviously more specific, and these three are. So it's going to pick one of these three. Since it's first is red and then blue, and these are equally important or equally specific, it will go with the latter one, which is not a good way to work it out. You want to be more specific if it's important, and I'll show you a little bit by specificity. I did some Googling and I found something. I can't find my link. Okay, I'll just Google it. CSS specificity calculator. This guy, Keegan, made a cool calculator. And if I put in this ULLI thing, it says you've got no IDs. There's no IDs in there. So you get a score of 0. There are classes in there, which gives me a score of 1. And there are 2 elements or pseudo elements. So it will check box by box which one is more important. And I've got this one over here. And it will give me the same score, 0 IDs, 1 class, 2 elements. If I want the red one to win, I could put in important with the exclamation mark. I thought of I never use it, so I'm not sure why doesn't it work. But it's put it in over here.
Yeah, that should be the one. Yeah, as I see before.
Yeah, let's double check. Yeah, it's now becoming red again. As you saw over here, it doesn't even say important. Important in this case, when I thought, oh, but this one is even more important, then I'll have to important be over there as well, and then you'll once you start with important, everything becomes important. It will generally just break your styles, and don't ever write important. It's not helping you out. It's the better way to look at it is like this. Okay, so we can check scores. At first, it will compare these two, which one has the most IDs. If this one has a single ID, this one has none, it will go with the first one. It just checks box by box. So 0 against 0, 1 against 1, 2 against 2. So if we want to make sure import the red one wins, we can add another class, or we can say if this one is on the body, or you can see this one is going to win because 0 against 0, 1 against 1, 2 against 3. This one will win by a margin, because if we put in this is UL with a styled UL, it will say this has both have 0 IDs. This one has 2 classes, so there it is. This one wins because the classes are more important. This one does have 2 elements, but we don't care about elements because the battle has been won. This is 2 is better than 1. So this is the way to go about it, and be more specific with your styles. Which in my case usually comes down to saying, okay, this UL is specific. I'll put in an ID. This is a home page list, for example, and you'll see that a home page list typo. This is 1 against 0, so this guy wins because there's an ID in there, I just messed up. But this is the way to look at it. And there's also, if you want to read more about it, there's CSS specificity. I like this talk from CSS Tricks. They've got a whole talk about what this does, and there's this little image halfway there. Just the best score you'll get from style attributes. So the thing we just talked about, like this thing, which you don't ever do. This guy wins. If there's style in there, it says, oh, this is probably more important than the styles you got there. If it's an ID, you get scores for this. Then there's the classes and there's the elements. So this is basically the same thing that you just saw. And it will say, okay, you can want your points one by one. It will compare them. This is the way. So you can tell me. Let's see. I'll do one check with you. This one is also hard to do. Nah, I think it makes sense for now. Does it, Ismail?
Yeah, it's more clear now. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. I like this topic because it's at first it's like weird to see. You'll try to move it around. It doesn't care. It will just compare scores. But in this case, these scores are equal, so it will pick the last one. But it's all about scoring and specificity. Okay.
Okay.
I'll remove this one again, and we'll continue.
I had a second question. That was actually about the readings of the first week. Inside there, I saw some notes about the which is your code. Some tips about that. There's a section about VS Code tips, VS Code tips. And it said to install a global node package for ES lint extension with that command, but it doesn't work on my terminal, which is git bash on Windows. I don't know if the command has a problem or I have a problem.
Okay.
Or should I install an npm extension self to search it as searching itself?
That's exactly the correct answer.
Is that it?
And npm is just another piece of software. So, in essence, npm. I'll just give you npm. What is it? What can I do? npm.js.com. Build amazing things. Blah 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 blah. Okay, it's hard to check over here. It's like ESLint. You'll see there on npm. It's like a website with tons of packages that you can install. It's like all these things that somebody has built and you can reuse. It's convenient that these guys made it like a big website with all the stuff on there. And npm, the command you're typing in there, is a little program that says, okay, let's connect with this website. Check, we're going to install something. We're going to install ESLint. So it's trying to install this little guy over here. And what does this do? It will say, okay, you can install ESLint. There's, my screen is too small. I don't recognize this version. Most guys make a nice README. These guys say, okay, if you want to install it, you need to do npm install this guy and save it in configuration or save it locally, whatever. There's all the stuff you want to know about this package. And npm is just a little software like Homebrew or Chocolatey, just a convenient way to install JavaScript or download JavaScript files. Essentially, that's the only thing it does. It says download it. It doesn't actually install it. But and MySG says I wanted -G. I wanted to install it for my whole computer instead of just this local piece of software. And I guess when you say command not found, it essentially means you didn't install npm yet. And to be honest, I didn't think they would put this as a suggestion for your first week. I tend to leave ESLint out because it's complaining all the time about how bad my code is. ESLint is the complainer. Its only its purpose is to complain about how bad your code is and tell you, oh, you have to improve your code here, you improve your code there.
Then I ignore it for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I would skip it, and you'll touch on npm later on the JavaScript course, like in a few weeks. Then they'll tell you about how to use npm, and up until that point, you don't really have to use it. So I would leave it and wait for it to be discussed in that course.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas.
Yes, you're welcome. Is Oet is he around? I didn't see Tagdada, Kishmel, Aida. No, Faida is there. Okay, so I'll check and I'll raise questions. While I was inspecting popular websites, I realized that most of them are using REM as measurement units instead of PX. Can you please explain why? There's a good question. I think it's been asked a few times. This is like a discussion on the web, RAM versus PX, and you'll find quite some guys making blog posts about why we use the one or the other. Should I use this or the other? It's a non-stop discussion. They're both doing the same thing, and the let me see. These guys they start out with, okay, we're doing this debate. We, like many others, are ready to ditch them, return to pixel. Pixels are easy. As long as read pixels are ignorant, don't use them. So they want to use pixel, but they don't. It's a complicated topic, and I like this little line in his conclusion, saying, depending on the project, who's developing it, or in various other factors such as project budgets. In your case, your budget is like 1 week. You have 1 week to deliver on your homework. So you have to be realistic. Pixels might be easier and quicker. It is also might be easier and quicker to ignore accessibility. Accessibility is that's what the REMs are about. If you type, if you say my font is like a 10 REM and my heights are in REM, it's really nice because if someone has bad eyesight and needs bigger sites, you can just change the configuration of Chrome. Then I'm talking about the default settings. So like you're just gonna search somewhere over here and say, okay, I want to have I don't even know where it is. It isn't about zoom. I think it's about these settings. So default settings of your Chrome. Not many people need this, but people with bad eyesight probably know how to find this stuff or take the effort to change it. But you can use PX. PX doesn't work bad. For example, in my index, is it still working? I've been working with PX up until now, and if I scroll, things tend to still work fine. So it's not about zooming. It's actually about those people that need this accessibility feature. And if it's considered your homework, I would at first I wouldn't work with REM at first. It takes more time. It's an extra effort you put in for those guys that need it. So as it says, remember who you're building websites for. He intends this as a pun, like do it for the guys that need it. And in my case, I'm saying don't do it because it's just for yourself. If you're building, I never build with REM if it's just a small little proof of concept for myself or my colleagues. I know all my 100 colleagues, none of them have bad eyesight, so I save myself the trouble. If it's like a government website or a big web shop, you might take the investment and use REM. It's something you'll have to weigh for yourself which one's more important than the other. I'm the lazy guy. I tend to start with PX until my client says we're going to pay extra for extra time. Because if I start out with REM and it takes hours extra, and at the end they say, oh, we don't care, but you still have to deliver all the other features, then I'm like, oh, okay, I can be the good guy and start with REM. I rather start with the working website and then make it more accessible later. It's not a popular thing to say in webland. Most guys say, "Oh, accessibility first." That's not me. I know someone has to pay for it, so and my clients didn't. That's what it's about. Then, so it said, does the image tag has ending slash? Because I haven't seen any ending slash in any image tag except in the HTML CSS week 1. Is it okay if I remove it? Some of you might have noticed this as well. The ending slash in code, for example, if I go here and I say I'll pick up this cute little cat and I make an image over here. Let's image source equals cat, and I'll make it a bit smaller so you don't have to wait for the cat to load. Should we do the slash there or don't we? Let's check if it works. This one is working. And now with the slash, refresh, it still works. So apparently it doesn't matter. I'll tell you a little bit of the background. Back in the day, like 10 years ago, when HTML5 started, or before HTML5, every element had to have a closing tag. Some elements, however, like an image, this would look weird, right? If you do the image like this, because what's this space in between? Is there a space over here? And if I type like a hi, where will this hi end up? Okay, my browser did think of something, but it doesn't make sense. There isn't a text within an image, so they basically said, okay, you can close this tag immediately. So it's the self-closing tag. So you don't have to make it an extra closing tag, just close it immediately. And then when HTML5 came, they say, well, this doesn't make sense for such elements that don't have any content. You can omit it or you can put it in there, whatever you're used to. So you can leave it like this, and it works. It's a bit of what you're used to. If you know your element doesn't contain a thing, so there are a few of these. I did Google this, so I might give you the link that I found. I typed in are self-closing tags valid? And then Stack Overflow comes up first, which is always the best because it usually is summarized. And I tend to see, okay, the title is correct. Skip the question. Save yourself some time. Which one is answered? This one has been picked as the correct answer. Sometimes you should check the number as well. There were 1,200 votes, and this one has 400 votes. So this one is also good. But there is an occasion that the guy who asked the question picked one, which is turning up first, and then the answer below has way more votes. So I would usually check for votes. Well, in this case, there is also picked as the answer and has some more votes. So I'll just read this. And it says in HTML4, blah, 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 just what I told you, you need closing tags. In XHTML, they wanted to go the XML route and everything had to be really strict. And at HTML5, they said, okay, there are some elements designated as void, an element without any content, just as I explained. And void elements, we'll see here it is about the void elements. If the element is one of the void elements, then there may be a single solid character. The slash may be there, but it has no effect. So just as I told you, as I demonstrated, the slash can be there, doesn't do a thing. And void elements are area, base, br, call, embed, this little list. Your IDE, like VS Code, will tell you if it's need to be there. If I do p, make it p tab, or if I do image and a tab, it doesn't do it. So I would say trust VS Code to give you an error, and I will show you if there needs to be a closing tag and the slash. It's up to you. I think that's answer for now. Ekmel isn't here either, right? Okay. You want to know use section or to replace divs, but don't use for self-contained content. So when is it appropriate to use the section element? And what's the benefit of you using instead of div? The benefit is unknown. No one knows. The screen readers might use it. So someone that has a trouble reading. I have a colleague. He's a really good developer, but he can't read. he lets the computer read everything aloud. It might use sections, but I haven't heard of it being used for now. It functions the same way as a div. Um, so you can use it for accessibility for some pro screen readers that use it. And I wanted to show like what can you use it for. And this is a good example. They don't use it, for example, but I think it makes sense to say what are sections? What could be sections? You could say this top part could be a section, like the header, but there's already an element that's called header, so you don't have to use section there. This is the main content, and that's what we got the main element for. These are basically behaving like divs, but just with another name. Within main, however, we do have this like highlighted stuff. These are the highlights, and these are the rest of the stuff. So there you go, and I would say you could say main section IDs highlights. Ignore my typos. And section ID is the rest of the stuff. That's the way you could use sections. And this is, you're not going to do sections in sections. It's just to make sure you know what is a large chunk of my page. And it can make sense in your styles to see, oh, this is a section, so I know this is a large chunk. If it's a div, oh, this is probably a smaller chunk. So this is going to be a div with divs with divs, this little thingy. But it is inside a large section. It's convenience. Or giving semantics, like giving meaning. So you know, oh, this is the main stuff, so you know what it is about just by reading the element name. And by just by reading section, you know it's a large chunk of my site. So it's helpful to some extent. But if you inspect, you could see this div, 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 all the way. These guys don't do sections. And it was watching another site, new.nl. It's quite these guys do. Div span, div, div, a, link, link, div, div, div. All the way, whoa, all this stuff. Div, 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 div. They don't do sections. And these guys do check for accessibility stuff. They do data section, which is a JavaScript thing, I guess. So use section if you like, and don't if you don't. That's the gist of sections. Let's go back. I think that this answered the section stuff. What is the relationship between two elements, one inside the parent as position absolute and the parent element as position relative? There's an example of a box that's being made with certain sizes. There is a h1 inside there, which is absolute. And when it's absolute, the h1 will go on top. And if add position relative to the parent, then it stays in the box. What's the reason? Well, I did prepare this question. Let's go back to my code and say discard two files. Discard. You can do it. This is so slow. Yay, there it is. Okay. I made a little block. It's just saying this is a block. It has an image, it has a title, and has some text. As if we were on the verge. you have an image, a title, and something else in there. That's what I was intending to make. So it is a container within a div, an image and stuff. The block is gray. The content has some spacing. We discard the margin for now to keep it pretty. And the title has to be bigger. Nothing fancy up until this point, right? But I want to have this title just slightly over the image, because that's what my design is, not like here, but a little bit over there, because I like this styling. So then I would say the position of the title has to be absolute, because in HTML nothing will stack up over each other. Images and text, they don't go over each other. You don't have it's not fluid or something. You have to make sure to tell it, okay, this one, ignore the layouts, just go somewhere. I want to go a little bit above to the top, so go 25 pixels upwards. And I'll show you what happens without the relative. It's just like you know, Ekmel asked. Ekmel said the block, if it's not relative, everything is here's now cool title. Why is it going over there? And if it's relative, it's gone and goes back down there. And if you could remove the, it's at first it was like this. When you put in position absolute, it becomes like it's floaty. It's just go wherever it likes. The point is, position absolute assumes we are talking about the context of the whole page, always. Absolute just thinks, okay, there's nothing to keep into account. For example, if this should it take this as its should be positioned relative to this or to this block or to this body, or this, where does it need to take, what does it need to take into account? By default, body. If you wanted to take something else into account, like for example the block, we could do you could say it needs to take into account the block. You, where will it appear? Here, there. I'll ask Ida. Where do you think it will, if I put position relative in the block content or in the block itself? If you put it in block, where will it appear? The block is the gray area. Can you give me a guess, an educated guess? You're still muted, so I can't hear you. Ida, you're still muted. No problem. It happens to the best of us.
I was taking note. Which block? Sorry.
Okay. I made a little block, and it starts with this pink image, and it's gray. So the gray area is the block.
I don't see the screen.
Oh, is it the? Do you see the kitty?
Yeah, but the screen share.
So sometimes it does this. If you don't see his screen share, you have to refresh the page.
Oh, I have to refresh. Does she or does I? Oh, she refreshed and she's gone.
Okay, yeah, now I can see it.
Okay, so I was wondering, there's this cool title, which is now relative to the whole page.
Okay.
And I already showed you if it's relative to content, it will go here.
Okay.
And what will happen if I put it in block? Do you have any clue?
If it's absolute,
Yeah.
it can float.
Yep. So the title is absolute. It's already absolute, so it's floating somewhere up there. If I make this one relative, the block relative, so I'm saying anything that's within this block, you start counting from here, this top left corner. So it's basically saying, I'll just demonstrate. It's hard to verbalize what I'm asking for. If I save it, it goes like this position. Thanks for working with me. I'm not sure how to ask it better, so I'll just continue. We'll both have to work with the remote working, so it's not nothing personal.
Okay.
The thing is, so we said this block is relative now. So this title is should be top value top 0. It will match exactly with in line with this one. And if I say left 0, it will go in the corner. And I'll say right, and you'll see it will go in this corner. It will always stay within, or it will calculate starting from this box, because the block is now the relative position. That's what you use relative about. But then I wanted the cool title just to appear a little bit over this line. So I thought, okay, I'll make the content relative. So I say position relative. Now it's starting to calculate from this top, which is making more sense to me, because the title is just down there. And now I'll say top minus 25. So it's just what makes sense to you. You can calculate from here and push it down, or I've just from here push it a little bit up. Whatever makes sense to you. And I thought this makes sense just to make the content relative and push it a little bit. Does this make sense to you, Ida, for this
Yeah.
relative and
Yeah.
absolute stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question about this, please.
Okay, sure.
So just to make sure that I understand it well, when you put the position of the gray box as relative, everything within the box became relative as well. The position became relative as well.
Everything that's absolute within the box, that became this one became relative to block. This one doesn't become relative automatically. You'll see that my title just moved over here. So content didn't become relative because block is relative. It's like title is absolute, and because absolute, it will try to find absolute relative to what. So it's trying, is it relative to content? No, not relative to content. Relative to block? Oh yeah, it is relative to block. So it will just search for the best parent that is the first parent that is relative.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just noticed that we are going out of time a little bit, so but we are almost there. So if you don't care, I'll just continue. There's another question from Faida, but Feza, you did ask a question as well. I remember, but I didn't see it over here. Is it perhaps in the channel? Yeah, here it is. Oh, no, that's not the question. That's, can you ask a question? You can. Oh, here it is. This is your question, right, Feza?
Let me check this. Yeah. Yeah. This is my question.
Can you tell us about your question?
In the document, it says that specificity has higher priority than ordering rules. So I cannot understand clearly. So can you give me an example? Actually, I understood a little bit. I think it tries to explain that if, for example, if I have two div tag in my if I declared in my CSS style sheet two div tag properties as CSS. If one of them has a class, this class is has a high priority, so it will be applied in that web in that HTML. Now, if I have two div and one of them has a class,
Mhm.
and this class declared in HTML tag will be applied. Am I true?
Yeah, that's correct. This is a bit about something else. We already.
The order is
So,
not important. I
um,
mean,
I'll show you another example. For example, if I say block content b margin 10 px, can you guess which one is being applied for these two? These are the same tag.
yeah,
So,
normally the first one will be applied.
I think the last one.
it's the last one.
Sorry, the last
The
one.
last
Sorry,
one.
the last one. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's correct.
Yeah, the
Um,
last one.
and in this case, for example, when we put in import special whatever, and we put in special as well over here on the p tag, we say it's class special. So this p tag, which one is now applied for this, the one that's called special? So this one is called special.
Yeah.
Which one is applied?
The first one will be
Why?
applied now because it has a class name now. If you declared a special, if you declared in p tag a
Mhm.
class name which names special,
Mhm.
the first one will be applied.
So it doesn't matter this one comes later. It doesn't matter anymore, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what they are saying over here. Specificity, like the clauses, the let's how do I make this in screen? Uh, I don't know how to make it both in screen. It says specificity has a higher priority than ordering rules. So it's more important how specific you are than the order in your file.
Yeah.
And that's exactly as you already understood. So it's just this language is hard to comprehend sometimes. But in practice, you knew what it was about. It's not going to use this one because this is more specific. It doesn't matter that this one comes later. The order in your file is less important. You better check the specificity. That's more important or more
Yeah.
as a high priority. So did you answer your own question now? Or does it make sense to you now?
Yeah. I
Okay,
see.
okay, cool.
Thank
So
you.
you already understood your own question. Um, let's go back to Vida. You are allowed to pose more questions, but we might be interrupted by Jebe, uh, who wants us to stop. I don't care that much. I can put in another 15 minutes. So. Go on and oh, there is Alex with us because we didn't discuss his question, but Alex isn't with us. I remember, right? For the moment, Tarek Manabri, do you have any questions because you haven't spoken yet?
Um, I did speak. I had two questions at the beginning.
Oh, you had. Oh, my bad. Is it then the other Tarek?
Yeah, I'm the one who hasn't any question, not yet.
Okay. You still don't have any questions?
No, not at all. Everything was clear for me.
Okay, cool, cool. Still know that they're going to be strict about it. So even if you don't have any questions, just say I understand it all. Um, I don't have any questions, but I would like to attend. That will make the guys at Hack Your Future more forgiving. So that's a suggestion from my. I don't care. I like you all to be around. It's hard if you all of you don't send any questions. I'll have to talk about my cats or whatever. I don't know what to talk about. So please submit questions. That will save my day. But for Hack Your Future,
We will have a lot.
okay, cool, cool. Um, then we'll continue with Vida. Your question's up then next.
I think it's a little bit related to my previous question with view heights and view widths. Now it comes the property of min and max. Again, it's a bit height related, and we are running low on time. Could you just give a one or two examples, Ben, and how could we use it? Because I think this again come intermediate QRS. Like for example, we have a container that is 400 pixels wide, but on phone that has only 400 pixels, we wouldn't want to use it, and that's probably when we would set that, hey, I want the max width or max the height to be like 200 or so.
Okay, I'll try to give you an example. In this case, I find this header, okay, I like cats, but this is way too big. This is daunting. So I would say this header, it can be a height of 100 visual height, but the max height, uh, let's make sure it doesn't ever grow bigger than 400 px. So we will try, this is not a good solution, I see, because this thing is already on top. I wouldn't know how to fix it, but this does show my point. That I'll leave it broken for now, but it is scaling. I thought so. It is now. You'll see it will grow with me up until the point that it's 400 px. So now this is the moment that it stops growing. So you can say I want it to grow relatively until a certain moment and then stop growing, please. And it can be the other way around as well. Here's a min height. For example, I like this cat. Really, I can be as big as you like. At a certain point, the cat will be. It has to be at least 400 px. So the you don't want headers that are too small. For example, that's how they work. You always use them in combination. I never use them on their own. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does. So we always will use n height property and then min or max height next to it.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way I use them. Yeah.
Okay.
There's no point in saying there's a minimum height if it's not growing, if it's not if it's not you say it relative, yeah, I think relative is the term. If it's not growing, if it's not relative, then there's no point in saying min height. Min and max height are there to say okay, it can grow up until a certain point. Okay, um, let's see if one of these is still. We have time left. Okay, question. As far as I understand, it's not a good practice to measure size of elements. For example, in fonts, in absolute values like px or oh, we already had this dealt with. We there's also a way to make sure you're allowed to do the course. Just copy paste someone else's question. It's not a problem to have the same question, but we answered this one already. As far as I understood, HTML is used to describe the contents of the page and CSS to describe the layout. Is it a good practice to insert additional elements in the HTML for layout purpose only? It's a good question. If you're a purist, you don't like to put in extra elements in HTML to make it prettier, but it doesn't matter. You can put in as much as you like. There is a maximum, unfortunately. According to Google, I was once making a site. It's called meetbuiten.nl, and these guys have a menu with really lots of contents. So we had these are all divs with divs with divs with allies with like I think this accounted for a few thousand HTML elements. That was a point that Google became. They were complaining that you have got too much HTML elements. So there is a maximum, but I didn't know exactly how to make it less because you need these lines. It's not about styling; it's more about the amount of elements. Um, for layout purposes, well, you've seen me do it. I don't care if it's a block and then a content. This class didn't do much. Well, text will come. You will have the image and text below it. That's the default of HTML. I did just put in this content class to make sure that the title was going to end up. Ditched it. I want the title to appear right here. That's why I added this content class. It's no problem. You can put it in like that. That's okay. Um, yeah, you don't want to put in too much because that will screw with your mind. But then like this, it's not. It's okay. you can put in some classes or some extra elements just for layout purposes. I think it's okay like this. I tend to keep empty lines for sanity. That's something. It's also another problem for HTML. It will just ignore my empty lines. Doesn't do a thing. You can also delete every line break. If I go like this, put it on a single line, my site didn't change. It doesn't care about more or less empty lines. It's just hard to work like this. So I'll put in my empty lines again. Okay. I think that were all the questions. It took us an hour and 20 minutes, but then we had a good time. I did laugh a few times, so and I did see you smile as well. So I hope that we answered some of your questions. Oh, I think we had them all. So Chebe is around. He just didn't show himself. Hey, there you are.
I'm here.
Cool.
I didn't want to distract you.
Ah,
How's today? Maybe
Ali.
I can ask. Let me check. Tarek Manabri.
Yeah.
Did you like? How did you like the first Q&A session? Or is it? Sorry, Thomas. Before I start this, are you finished?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Cool. Finally.
Finally, you survived.
Yeah. No, it was really useful. Some of the questions that other people asked also, I was wondering about, but I was kind of delaying it to the next Q&A, or I would figure it out by myself. But it's very useful to like ask questions and see that also other people ask different questions, that it will be useful for you and others.
Nice. That's cool to hear. And so now you're stuck with less questions than before, because sometimes you can also have like, I have 2 questions. Can you please answer them? And then afterwards you have 6 questions, 6 more questions.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
When I saw the other people's questions, I was like, yeah, I could have asked this as well, but yeah, luckily they did. So.
Cool. Good to hear that. And Ahmad?
Yeah.
Did you like it today?
I love that it was really easy. I was a little bit anxious at the beginning, to be honest, but it was way easier than expected. And Thomas is great. He has all the patience, and yeah, I loved it.
Cool. That's good to hear. And then last one, Aida.
Yeah, it was nice. I thought I didn't have a question, but when other people questions were asked, I was taking notes, so it was nice.
Cool. Good to hear. And Thomas, did you like it as well?
Yeah, I do. It's I don't care what subject it's about. I like to just explain. I had some trouble with my own software, so I'll have to fix it sometime to give a better demo. But I think in the end, the demo was fine. It was good enough. I had fun today. So we had some jokes. I made jokes about Hack Your Future, so not personal. It's
Okay,
just,
okay, I'm gonna check the whole recording.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Cool. That's good.
I had
to
a good
hear.
time. Yeah.
Super nice to hear. Take a cold shower, I would say.
Yeah, we need it. Yeah.
And I see you all student on Thursday for a call, and I see you, Thomas, next week, Sunday.
Oh, and I wanted to tell I'm on Slack, so if there's something I've shown you or you have any question, I like to answer questions. I'll if it's possible.
Yeah, that's my colleague. It's Federico again.
Okay, I was just wanted to say if there's something you want to ask me. I've been I had some one-on-one talks with guys, and I've even had a whole night had a chat with some student. I like to do this stuff, so I might not have the time, but feel free to ask me anything. I like to tell and teach. This is what I enjoy. So it's actually a pleasure to help. So if you have a question, give me the pleasure to help you.
Sure. Thank you.
That's nice.
So let's all help Thomas and have a lot of questions ready for him.
That's cool.
Okay, guys, have a nice Sunday.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
To you all also. Thank you very much.
Yes.
See you around.
See you. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a nice
Bye
day.
everyone. Have a nice day.